What's up, guys? This is DocHoliday once again for StarCastTV, bringing you this time an excellent professional Korean level, ZvP. It's going to be a really fun one, so let's go ahead and get right on into it. Alrighty, guys. Well, in the bottom right-hand corner, spawning as the blue Zerg, we have none other than Killer. And in the top left-hand corner, spawning as the brown Protoss, we have Toss Teacher 777, aka Jaehoon. Alrighty, guys. So ZvP, pretty interesting matchup. I think a lot of people consider ZvP to be Protoss's least favorite matchup as far as difficulty goes. Zerg has a lot of tools in the early game to put on pressure on the Toss, limit their vision, as well as just win out with some very early cheesy type strategies. It's a very technical matchup from the Protoss perspective, where very small uses of units like High Templars and stuff can mean the difference between winning and losing the game. And for Zerg, it is a very, I wouldn't say super forgiving, but certainly more forgiving than for Protoss, a very big macro-oriented matchup. Alrighty, well, let's go ahead. First things first, we're going to check out. Doesn't look like it's going to be an overpool for Killer, so likely then going to be a hatch first build. We do already see droning up all the way to 12. Let's see, maybe it is a pool first? No, looks like it is going to be a hatch first build after all. Could have been a 12 pool on the edge of that creep there, but yeah, we do have the drone coming all the way down to the natural expansion, checking to make sure that there is no probe in the natural, and then going and throwing down that hatchery. In the meantime, let's take a look and see what Jaehoon's build is going to be. Looks like the very classic Forge Fast Expand. I'm sure not only the StarCraft 1 players, but also even StarCraft 2 players in the chat going to be very familiar with how the Forge Fast Expand works. I'm just going to be a build where we get some cannons here and secures the front of the Protoss base, so then get that very quick nexus and get their economy going nice and strong here. So we do have a pool after that first hatch, so nothing crazy. Like a you know, 3 hatch before pool, for example. Alrighty, and a single cannon. So this is pretty much the appropriate response here. Unfortunately, you know, Jaehoon was not able to get into the main base here to see that there is no Lings on the way. So the single cannon was the right call here before the gateway. Unfortunately, if that had been spotted, of course, the gateway would have come first. I'm going to just sped down the tech path as fast as possible for Jaehoon. Killer now securing a third base here, as per normal, and it looks like we have normal timing for the gas to indicate likely going to be a 3-hatch Spire. There is always the opportunity for Zerg to go for Hydralisks, a very early pressure style. That does put Protoss on the back foot very early, but we'll have to see what the tech choice is once we hit 50 gas. Couple of Zerglings on the ramp, going to completely deny vision of the main base here. And that is really unfortunate for Jaehoon. That is just kind of what happens when you go for that very late scout, and it does look like we do have Hydralisks coming out. So this is unfortunate, a bit of, I guess not necessarily a misstep, but certainly something that we need to take into consideration. Missing the ability to scout the main, unfortunately, makes it very difficult for our Protoss player Jaehoon to decide whether or not they need to make a ton of cannons here at the front, or if they should be just trying to get out those Corsairs right away to deal with any early kind of meatless harass and get the scout off that they need. Alright, Ling's potentially going to catch this probe out in the middle of the map. The probe really wants to stay alive for as long as possible. Slow Ling's really not a great unit early game in order to catch these probes. Very slippery unit, the probe here, so still not going to be able to confirm whether or not there is a Hydralisk down or if there is a layer started in the main base. And that is something that we are just going to have to see how Jaehoon deals with. One thing that he may want to do is start counting drones rather, at the separate bases here. and that can give an indication on whether or not you'll be, seeing it in all-in or not. First Hydra's now going into production, and as soon as these Hydras pop out, it's going to be a very big indication that it is time to make some defenses here at the Protoss base. Unfortunately for Jaehoon, the probe gets sniped at a very ideal time, so still just not going to have any early warning that these Hydralisks are on the way. Hydralisk speed now done. Hydralisk range has now been started. Of course, Hydra range allows Hydralisk to shoot the wall outside of the range of cannons, but currently there's only a single cannon here at the natural expansion for Jaehoon, so Killer going to find an excellent opportunity to potentially bust this natural. As soon as that Hydra gets seen by the Corsair, we have double cannons going down at the natural expansion. I anticipate that we're going to see even more coming up very soon. Here comes another one now that minerals have allowed. That's 4 cannons so far, and this is actually like the bare minimum defense here. And with only 1 cannon so far, we do have to pull the probes in order to make sure that this wall doesn't go down, as 1 Zealot is really not that much HP holding the army units outside of your base here. So, good probe pull, excellently done. Not too much loss in the way of workers so far. Hydras do take down that first cannon, but 2 more have been able to be warped in. And now that Hydra range is done, the wall is certainly at risk. We have hold position Hydras focusing down this gateway. This is 7 cannons now having been created at the front of the base here. Unfortunately, just a little bit of a mistake. We got to back this Hydralisk up a little bit. We lose one for free, but that's just how it goes sometimes. In the meantime, though, it does look like Killer is not going to be going for a full all-in here. We already have the 4th base down and the 5th macro hatchery as well. So we're continuing to produce a couple of Hydralisks here, but this is primarily just to force a reaction out of Jaehoon. And now that Jaehoon has put down 7 cannons and has significantly slowed down his economy, it looks like Killer is going to be putting his foot on the gas and producing lots of drones and getting that big mid-game Zerg economy that we all like to see. This one Hydralisk just working really hard all by himself. His friend's not helping him at all on this forge. Storm almost now complete. And we already have a storm in the bank on that first High Templar. But look at that, we have 9 drones in production, 11 drones in production now. So really going super, super hard in the drones. And that is exactly what you want to see after a nice little successful scare tactic by sending the Hydras over to the front. Now, going for this Hydra attack can also just be transitioned into an all-in if things are going the way that they want. So Killer deciding that this is not going exactly how he wanted this to go as far as an all-in opportunity. So instead going for this economic switch over to 5-hatch style is also very, very viable. Now we have the lair almost finished. That's going to allow for Lurker to be researched, which is an incredibly powerful unit in the mid-game and really all game long for the Zerg. Don't quite see that on the way yet on the production tab, but we do have ranged attack now coming out for the Hydralisk, almost finished. Or not almost finished, halfway finished, I suppose. And this is where the game gets a little passive. So Protoss has this like kind of long waiting period where they don't have much of an army. They've been establishing their economy, getting on 2 bases. Now we're building up to a large number of gateways. 7 gate is an incredibly aggressive number of gateways. 8 being essentially, I think, the limit of production that 2 bases can sustain. So we're going to likely see a very large swell of Protoss units here coming out in just a moment. And looks like the tech that we have gone for the Zerg route is Spire. So this is going to allow the production of Scourge, which can kind of snipe these Corsairs out of the air. And of course, Mutalisk, which is the primary focus for the Spire tech here. The Mutalisk are going to be essentially the anti-High Templar unit. You either need to go Lurker in the mid-game or you need to go Mutalisk. Mutalisks, of course, are used to ball up and then you snipe them out very quickly. And then the Lurker, instead, you spread them out. And they provide a large field by which you have to use tons of storms in order to neutralize the Lurker field. So, I really certainly like this idea of getting the burrow tech as well. This is very interesting. We have a couple of Hydralisks here showing that there's like a force watching, but I'm sure as these Hydralisks run away from the army, this little High Templars in the back will be in a position to get sniped out. So very clever move here by Killer. And here we go. We have a couple of Scourge to try and run down these Corsairs before the Mutalisks potentially are going to come out here and deal their damage to the High Templar ball. We really have to start watching out. We're getting to that point here where we've got enough production now. We're going to likely see a move out by the Protoss in a minute. Alrighty. Bunch of High Templar, bunch of Storms here now at the natural expansion, and we are slowly starting to move out here. I'd likely expect to see a couple of these cannons get shot down because they are currently creating a bit of a problem for the units trying to get out of the natural expansion here. Dragoons, of course, very boxy, bulky units, have a hard time really getting out onto the map when there's so many cannons blocking their way. Alrighty. And we have now the decoy Hydralisks being pushed out of the way here. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait for these Hydralisks to pop out of the ground and pop some High Templar really very quickly. Alright. Oh, we're going to see it any minute. There goes the cannon, though. Oh, here it comes. We have a large contingent. Oh, we have a giant sandwich attack. The Hydras immediately snipe a ton of the High Templars in the back. Looks like at least 2 of them. And now that there are not very many Storms available, the Hydralisks are able to push the Protoss army back into the natural expansion. So very clever move by Killer. Gets a nice tactical advantage with that burrow. And now we are just throwing away Hydralisks into Storms. So being as good-mannered as possible, Killer just saying, you know what? I did kill those High Templars. Why don't you just take a couple of my Hydralisks? It's fine. Don't worry about it, dude. You know, it's a very giving spirit, this one. At this point, though, Killer has gotten a massive economy. As you can see, 53 workers here. We have additional bases coming up on the map. This is like enough to have infinity Hydralisks for a large portion of this mid-game. Lurker Tech is now finished as well. So it's going to do an excellent job at killing these buffering Zealots. And of course, you know, Dragoons without Zealots and without High Templar are very weak. So High Templar are going to be wasting their Storms trying to kill some of these Lurkers as well before the Observer comes out. And now it looks like we have Killer trying to establish a bit of a Lurker contain. Now, we don't have quite the number of Lurkers that we might want in order to actually set up a hard contain here. But the fact that we don't have mobile detection in the way of observers yet is going to still make this a fairly nice deterrent for the Protoss army. In the meantime, looks like we have a probe trying to move over here and try to expand. We do advance the lurker line a little bit to make sure that if this probe throws down a base, we can always just walk up and deal with it. Obs on the field now, though, going to make this a much more effective fighting force now that they can fight against the lurkers. But the Obs gets instantly sniped by the High Templar. Very nice tactical move that you don't see used kind of at lower levels. But sniping those observers out of the sky makes it really, really difficult for a Protoss to ever be able to move out into a lurker field. Just masses of Hydralisks continuing to stream across the map to reinforce this contain here. I'd like to see a couple more lurkers, to be honest. But, you know, Hydra's a very good, strong unit to continue just to mass. They're good. They're reasonable against literally everything that Protoss can produce. Once again, very big attempt to move out here. And this is unfortunately a little bit of a bad timing for Killer, because he was up at the third base trying to kind of shut down that third base before it gets set up. So these Hydralisks were just kind of chilling, not doing anything during that fight. And now we have a very large army from Jaehoon just traveling across the map here. So we are going for the third instead over here, which is just a mineral only. Unfortunately, not ideal since you're not going to be able to produce nearly as many High Templar or Dragoons or even potentially Reavers along down the line since you don't have access to a third gas as a Protoss player. So that's very unfortunate. Cute little move here with the Lurker Eggs on the ramp. Going to block the ramp so none of these Zealots can get up and start damaging the Hydralisks. And this is always a nice little play here. Something that can just make a small group Hydralisks be a lot more cost effective than we normally be. And then we once again look at it's just a cloud of blue. It's just a gigantic wave of blue coming across the map here. And this is one of the things that professional Zerg players do that is just so impressive. They lose an army and you're like, man, that army really didn't do very well. And then you look back at the natural expansion and there's such a ridiculous number of units. It's like, what? How could this be possible? You just lost an entire army and you already have double the army that you just lost. Alrighty, very cute little Maelstrom here. Does a pretty decent job at negating some of the Hydralisks, but unfortunately the very expensive gas units have all been really shut down here. It's essentially just Zealots, and unfortunately Zealots very, very weak against Lurkers. So a follow-up morph of a couple of Lurkers will make this army very, very, unfortunately, cost-ineffective, as Zealots just really do, you know, they really just stack up a lot and take a ton of splash damage from the Lurkers. It is also very important to point out that due to the lack of Dragoons, busting any Lurker line is going to be much more difficult. Dragoons are kind of Protoss's natural counter to heavy Lurker compositions. Really, really good at kind of breaking those lines, as they have a good long range and pretty bulky body, so the splash damage really is not able to affect them very much. Alright, well, while we have this little point of kind of nothing going on here on the battlefield, let's take a look at Killer. I mean, he has been going insane on the macro. Doesn't look like we have hive tech yet, but man, do we have a whole heck of a lot of hatcheries. Look at the amount of hatcheries and macro hatcheries and bases that we have currently on the map. It looks absolutely spectacular. Massive, massive armies, massive, massive fights going to be kind of the way of this mid game here. And as a Zerg player, if you're ahead in supply versus a Protoss at any point, that is always a very good sign that you are really quite far ahead. Looks like we even have some aggressive tools now being pulled out of the toolbox here for Killer. A nice little drop coming up here, potentially to victimize this natural expansion a little bit. As you can see, the main has been mined out, and the natural is very much at threat as well of mining out. So really, any kind of trading at this point that Killer can do is going to be excellent. It's just a battle of attrition. And this distraction attack here at the third is going to potentially allow for this double drop here to do devastating damage. We have Lurkers in the back, potentially trying to kill all these probes. Looks like the probes got pulled in a good amount of time. And we have a drop in the main, and that is going to be it. Wow! You know, kind of a little bit of a preemptive GG in my personal opinion. Of course, Jaehoon did know he was in kind of a bad spot economically. Obviously, he was very, very behind on bases. He didn't have the economy to, you know, withstand this long-term Zerg siege. But potentially, you know, a fight could have gone his way, and he could have really snowballed that one fight into killing a couple of bases or something like that. Unfortunately, I think he did know, however, if he was going to defend the large drop in his main, he's going to have to bring his entire army away from the third, and that would be giving up the third base. So overall, I think he was certainly dead, but you always hate to see a player GG before they go for their last hurrah push. But, you know, these professional Koreans, they really know what they're doing, so you know, it's really hard to argue with a professional's sense of when the game is over. So that is it, everybody. Quite a quick game, just about 17 minutes here. But in that time, we did get up to a 5-base Zerg and a 3-base Protoss, so excellent play by both these players. I look forward to casting for you guys again in the future. This has been DocHoliday for StarCastTV, and I'm out of here.